The Unseen War. How God's divine intervention exposed their demonic plot to destroy you. Narrator, deep and powerful voiceover. Stop whatever you're doing and listen to this because it's about you. The quiet battle on your soul. The complex web of falsehoods constructed in the deepest corners by people you trusted has ended. The satanic scheme, methodically devised to destroy your destiny and take your blessings, has been exposed in the bright light of divine truth. They felt they were untouchable and that their words in the darkness would be your undoing. However, they made one deadly mistake. They attacked one of God's own. And now the paper trail they built to bury you has become their own gravestone. What you're going to hear is more than simply a narrative. It's the announcement of your vindication and the start of their dramatic demise. Their every secret, lie, and evil goal is now revealed on the desk of an investigation led by a force much greater than their own. They believe they could outwit the divine design for your life, but they have just provided God with all of the proof necessary to carry out their judgment. Their plot was a masterpiece of malevolence, a symphony of jealousy and greed orchestrated over months of clandestine family gatherings. They weren't just bitter, they were the architects of your demise. Imagine them meeting in private and analyzing every fiber of your existence. They examined your weaknesses with the cold, calculating eyes of a predator rather than with care. Your relationships, money, daily routines, quiet dreams, and darkest fears, all were exposed on their altar of envy. They looked for the ideal crack in your armor, the exact angle of attack that would inflict the most severe harm. They studied your personality with a sickening detachment, determining which psychological assaults would cripple you and which betrayals would ruin your faith in mankind. They researched your social circles with the accuracy of a military commander, finding the ties that served as the foundation of your support system and focusing their efforts on those precious links. To carry out their perfectly planned strategy, they sent a snake into your Eden, someone who could enter your world like a ghost. This person was more than a spy. They were a spiritual chameleon, a master of disguise and deceit. They were chosen for their remarkable ability to observe your behavior, absorb your energy, and mimic the tiny details of your interactions with the outside world. This wasn't just an imitation, it was a parasitic inhabitation. This individual studied your mannerisms, speech cadence, distinctive way of thinking, and even conflict resolution strategies. With this stolen information, they started to offer themselves to the world as a distorted mirror of you, a more agreeable, more accommodating, and, eventually, a more controlling version of your divine essence. They became an echo of your spirit, distorted and exploited to further a sinister objective. This counterfeit you started to move around your life, a wolf disguised in the fleece of your own identity. They were constantly eager to please, quick to provide a fake grin, and ready to appease people around them. The change was slight at first, a little disruption in the peace of your existence. Friends and loved ones started to have an unexplainable sensation of dread, as if something was terribly wrong, even if they couldn't explain what had happened. Your reputation, once a reflection of your character, started to deteriorate in subtle but evident ways, leaving you feeling alienated, uneasy, and painfully misunderstood. This infiltrator has made it their life's purpose to be your shadow, a continuous presence at every social gathering, family function, every moment of victory or weakness. They were a quiet watcher, absorbing your light and honing their warped copy until they became a compelling, but soulless, parody of who you really are. But you, as a chosen vessel of God's light, have a spiritual immune system that cannot be misled. Your soul detected the counterfeit energy before your rational mind could begin to solve the issue. You felt wrong in circumstances that were supposed to be comfortable and familiar. You saw tiny differences in how people viewed you, such as the unexplainable coldness in their gaze and the hesitant hug. There was a real heaviness in the air whenever this person was around, a stifling spiritual weight that only you, the genuine source of the light they were trying to imitate, appeared to sense. This was your heavenly alarm system, a gift from the Almighty that warned you of impending darkness. The rotten center of this complex and poisonous enterprise was a desire for what God had decreed for you: your inheritance, business, property, assets, and benefits that were legally and spiritually yours. Someone from your own ancestry, someone who knew your past, couldn't bear the sight of your elevation. They poisoned their own spirit by believing that you were undeserving of the benefits that came into your life. In their distorted narrative, they were the legitimate guardians of your fate, the ones who could manage things better. Your good fortune was not a source of joy, but a resource to be looted, a pie to be shared according to their own ravenous greed. This entitlement extended beyond just financial greed. Your family members felt a perverted ownership of your riches, feeling that their imagined requirements outweighed your God-given rights. They saw your success as a selfish accumulation that took away from what they thought was theirs, rather than a monument to your hard work, faith, and divine favor. They saw your light and frantically attempted to extinguish it, transferring the oil from your lamp to their own empty vessels. Determined to see your fall from grace, your relatives pooled their wealth and turned your demise into a ghoulish commercial opportunity. The financial commitment was significant, demonstrating the depth of their long-term interest in your downfall. They approached your demise as if it were a business merger, replete with strategic planning sessions, budget discussions, and a common fund devoted to supporting their evil campaign. Their level of dedication was astonishing. Some family members liquidated their life savings, while others took out large loans and even sold prized personal things, all to feed the engine of your downfall. Their willingness to risk their own financial security to engineer your downfall is a disturbing evidence to the demonic passion that had taken root in their hearts. The hired infiltrator, their chosen weapon, was lavishly rewarded for their treason, ensuring that their betrayal was more than a crime of passion. It was a cold, premeditated, and professional strike against your destiny. This individual wanted a considerable chunk of their cash-up advance, well aware of the serious spiritual and legal risks they were putting themselves in. They recognized the gloom of their mission and priced it appropriately. And your own family members, who should have been your staunchest supporters, readily opened their wallets. They sent large quantities of money to someone whose entire goal was to destabilize your tranquility, kill your character, and destroy your financial future. The payment arrangement was as formal and lifeless as a business agreement. There was a significant upfront charge to acquire their services, recurring monthly retainers for their ongoing terror campaign, and performance-based incentives granted for meeting specified, cruel milestones in their attack on you. In essence, your agony became a paid job, your tears a source of cash, financed by people who formerly knew your name and bloodline. The agony of this betrayal is not just in the act itself, but in the cold, corporate precision that underpins it all. These were the same folks that sat around dinner tables with you on vacation, smiling in your face and pretending love while covertly scheming your downfall. They were envious executives who planned a hostile takeover of your life. The hired operator handled their assignment with the concentration and chilling precision of a trained intelligence agent. They examined your everyday habits until they understood them better than you did. They meticulously mapped your connections, discovering both strong and weak linkages, as well as your weaknesses. They then deliberately and painstakingly integrated themselves into every aspect of your life: your social circles, your employment, and your larger community. Regardless of where you had a link, this individual managed to thread themselves into the fabric of your existence, making their invasion both clever and terrifyingly thorough. They went so far as to construct bogus social media identities to track your digital footprint, befriend individuals in your extended network to collect information, and make sure they were present at whatever event you attended. They were a persistent, smiling specter that seemed encouraging and kind while surreptitiously recording your every action, word, and breath. A moment in the God Connection family. Before we proceed with this stunning revelation, I need to address you personally, the core of this channel. If this message resonates deeply inside your soul, if you sense the truth of these words reverberating in your own path, please take a minute to confirm your connection with us. Click the subscribe button right now. Become an official member of the God Connection family, a worldwide community of Christians who advocate for truth, light, and divine justice. Furthermore, our ministry is devoted to delivering these life-changing lessons to selected individuals all around the globe. We are completely funded by your donations. If you feel prompted to sow into this rich land, we ask that you use the Super Thanks button below to make a $10 gift. That simple act of donating enables us to continue this precious job, to improve our capacity to generate these messages, and to reach countless more souls who are hungry for the truth. Your contribution is more than just a gift. It is a declaration of war against the darkness. Thank you for being an important part of our endeavor. Now let us proceed with God's revelation. The operative's goal was not to just mimic you, but to make a better version, a polished and more appealing imitation. They replicated your speaking style, inventive ideas, and sensitive attitude to relationships, but they lacked the true, God-given basis that made you real. This mimicry was a serious and devious breach. The infiltrator researched your main principles and learned to express them with much more eloquence than you. They studied your innate abilities and presented them in ways that made them look more spectacular. They selected your strongest character attributes and portrayed themselves as exaggerated, even holy examples of those virtues. Their purpose was to make you appear like a weak replica of themselves, the same person who was taking your soul. Simultaneously, they started weaving a tapestry of meticulously created tales about you. These were subtle, caustic distortions of the facts, rather than obvious falsehoods that are readily disproven. Each article provided just enough factual information to seem plausible, sowing doubt in the minds of even your most ardent fans. They portrayed you as unstable, unpredictable, and even deadly. They would imply to others that you were keeping a dark secret, that your success was founded on deceit, or that others should proceed with utmost care when interacting with you. These tales were crafted with the accuracy of a professional propagandizer. They would take a known fact about you and embellish it with fictitious features that dramatically altered its significance. If you were confident, they painted you as arrogant and egocentric. If you were independent and self-sufficient, they portrayed you as selfish and uncooperative. They indicated that if you were successful, it was because of unethical or dubious actions. As a consequence of this constant psychological warfare effort, your genuine connections started to deteriorate. People who had known and trusted you for years, and who had seen your character personally, started to question things they had never questioned before. The infiltrator was an expert at spreading seeds of doubt, while never seeming to be the root of the problem. They always portrayed themselves as the concerned friend, family, or innocent bystander who just thought that people had to know the truth. The psychological manipulation was so masterfully accomplished that they seldom chastised you directly. Instead, they would pretend to be concerned about your well-being, asking aloud if you were under too much stress or implying that your recent behavior was disturbingly out of character. All the while, they maintained the benevolent facade of someone who cared deeply for you, even as they systematically and ruthlessly eroded everyone's trust in your stability, sanity, and integrity. Unfortunately, your family's evil campaign didn't end with character assassination. They expanded their attack to a new front: legal warfare. They attempted to weaponize the same legal system created to protect the innocent, turning it into another tool of torture against you. False complaints were submitted with multiple authorities. False papers were fabricated. An illegal narrative was created to depict you as someone who needed to be stopped, confined, or punished to the fullest extent of the law. The legal method they used was both sophisticated and deviously planned. They submitted a barrage of complaints with numerous agencies at the same time, expecting that the sheer number of charges would give the perception of legitimacy and cause at least one of the spurious claims to stick. They created papers that were official at first sight, but were really filled with subtle lies and falsified signatures, all with the intention of undermining your reputation and legal standing. To back up their fake allegations, they recruited and instructed witnesses who were prepared to perjure themselves and testify, to wholly manufactured incidents. The whole purpose of this legal onslaught was to portray you as an unstable, dangerous person who constituted a threat to society. Their ultimate purpose was to trap you in a web of legal fights that would deplete your financial resources, devastate your emotional and mental health, and possibly limit your freedom or access to your own God-given possessions. While you were forced to go on the defense, devoting time, energy, and money to battle these bogus charges, they portrayed themselves as the reluctant and sad victims of your alleged misbehavior. They expected the judicial procedure to hurt you, expecting that even if their accusations were finally proved false, the experience would leave you forever damaged and shattered. The enormous expenditures of legal defense were designed to bankrupt you. The constant, crushing stress was intended to kill your health. The public exposure and humiliation were intended to forever destroy your reputation and status in your community. Even as the legal suits progressed, your family members played the role of somber protagonists, telling anybody who would listen that they had no option but to take legal action, professing to be devastated at having to pursue these steps against someone they claimed to love. They justified their savage assaults as acts of tough love, expressing deep concern for your well-being and the protection of others. They portrayed the whole event as a necessary intervention rather than what it was, an organized, calculated, and demonic attack. In their arrogant and godless calculations, they could not have predicted the tremendous might of divine justice. God always finds a way to protect His chosen ones who are fulfilling their divine destiny. Almost immediately after starting their legal machinations, their elaborate scheme started to disintegrate. The evidence they gave could not sustain even the most basic examination. Their trained witnesses stumbled when questioned, and their contrived accounts collapsed into a slew of discrepancies. Officials, inspired by a heavenly sense of discernment, soon identified the obvious anomalies and suspicious holes in their paperwork. Instead of announcing your demise, their legal onslaught paved the way for their own great exposure. Your family and their hired operator committed a tragic, irreversible mistake due of their arrogance. They used almost solely digital communication to plan their massive and complicated plot against you. Phone conversations, text messages, emails, and social media interactions were utilized to methodically chronicle each stage of their evil plan in real time. Convinced of their intellectual superiority, they built a vast and extremely damning digital trail of their misdeeds. Group discussions in which relatives celebrated successful assaults on your reputation. Email threads outlining the payment schedules and bonus arrangements for the hired operative. Voice messages provide enthusiastic updates on the campaign's success. Even their seemingly benign social media postings were filled with hidden language and inside jokes about their continuing operations against you. They openly discussed who to target next in your network of acquaintances, communicated sensitive data about your private life, and planned their falsehoods to guarantee consistency when questioned. They carefully coordinated the timing of their character assassinations to maximize impact, launching their attacks just before significant milestones, celebrations, or events in your life. What these morons failed to comprehend is that the world's law enforcement agencies have extremely sophisticated means for monitoring digital communications, particularly where there is a reasonable suspicion of fraud, conspiracy, harassment, or other major crimes. When investigators, led by God's hand, discovered a clear pattern of harassment and financial manipulation, they promptly obtained legal power to monitor all conversations between the conspirators. Ironically, the technology that your enemies thought would make their plots more successful and untraceable eventually became the heavenly weapon that sealed their destiny. Every digital encounter they had resulted in a permanent, irreversible record that could not be rejected, removed, or explained. The evidence was not only time-stamped and recorded, but it was also readily available to investigators who, led by divine wisdom, knew exactly what criminal tendencies to look for. Soon, your family members and their hired operative were under continual, invisible monitoring. Every phone contact, text message, and social media communication they exchanged contributed to the growing body of evidence against them. Unbeknownst to them, their private talks, triumphal gloating, and strategic planning were all being recorded, transcribed, and examined by experts trained to discover and deconstruct criminal conspiracy. The heavenly irony was astounding. The identical technology they used to coordinate their assault on you became the precise tool that chronicled and revealed their every action. Their overconfidence in their own intelligence, their arrogant notion that they were beyond reproach, had blinded them to the digital noose they were tying around their own necks. There was a significant official, a guy or woman of great integrity, appointed to assess instances like yours. This was not your average bureaucrat. This was a heavenly appointment. This person has seen several instances in which selfish and manipulative families sought to use the legal system to steal from or manipulate their own family. This authority has seen enough bogus statements and crocodile tears to recognize the patterns of dishonesty almost instantly. They have the necessary expertise and unshakable honesty to see through even the most complex and emotionally charged deceptions. Unlike others who may have been influenced by emotive rhetoric or skillfully crafted proof, this official tackled your case with a critical, methodical, and divinely inspired investigative perspective. They saw the mound of documents your family had given and knew right away that something was very wrong. The chronology of events did not add up. The evidence seemed to be produced and easily dispersed among the accused. The witness accounts were plagued with discrepancies and repeated words. Most significantly, when this authority examined your past, character, and activities, nothing corroborated the heinous claims levied against you. You did not match the description of the evil they had imagined you to be. As the inquiry progressed, obvious contradictions started to show through the gaps in their stories. Dates that were not consistent with known facts. Witness testimony that directly contradicted each other during questioning. And bank records that revealed a flurry of unusual activity, not by you, but by your accusers. The officials started to investigate more after sensing widespread corruption. They sought further paperwork, conducted more thorough interviews with witnesses, and started cross-referencing financial records with communication logs. It was then that they discovered the hidden payments made to the hired man, the covert planning sessions conducted behind closed doors, and the massive digital network of emails that detailed the whole scheme. Your family's basic, spiteful legal disagreement suddenly escalated into a full-fledged criminal inquiry of their own behavior. The official worked with different agencies and departments to ensure that every detail of their plot was thoroughly investigated. They transformed what your family had hoped for as a swift, definitive win into a thorough, multi-agency investigation of their own criminal operation. The exact legal system they had attempted to weaponize against you had, by God's grace, turned against them, becoming the divine power that would expose their acts to light and hold them responsible for every action. When the official inquiry began, things started to unravel for your attackers at an incredible and divinely choreographed speed. When the hired operative, the snake in your garden, realized they were now under official inspection, they soon lost the false confidence and charisma that comes from feeding off your energy and resources. The tension of the inquiry grew overwhelming. They could not sleep. They lost their appetites. Their hands trembled. They were no longer able to maintain the slick, persuasive, and polished demeanor that had successfully duped so many. The great psychological burden of being probed for severe crimes became too much for someone whose whole identity was based on deceit and imitation. They started to make unforced blunders, contradicting their own earlier comments, becoming obviously uncomfortable and worried in public, and unable to maintain the sophisticated image they had formerly so effortlessly cultivated. The mask was disintegrating, exposing the fearful and empty creature underneath. Meanwhile, the family members who had funded and directed the whole satanic enterprise were faced with repercussions they had never imagined. Their own reputations, activities, and fortunes were now under the rigorous scrutiny of a judicial and public inquiry. As the truth started to emerge for everyone to see, their carefully built world began to collapse. Their financial actions were thoroughly investigated, and their legal responsibility became so evident that their own lawyers started to withdraw from the case. The legal specialists who had first agreed to represent your family members gradually withdrew their services. They were afraid to jeopardize their professional reputations and legal licenses on a case so fraught with conspiracy, fraud, and perjury. The quantity of indisputable evidence raised serious ethical concerns that no respected attorney wanted to address. This left your family scurrying, anxiously seeking legal assistance, as it became painfully clear that their case was not just weak, but criminally problematic. On top of their legal problems, the business ties and financial initiatives that had been supported by the money stolen or diverted from you started to fail. Professional relationships that had formerly been robust were shattered suddenly. Financial institutions were informed by the inquiry and began their own internal investigations into a pattern of questionable activities. The conspirators' work conditions were more uncertain, particularly for those whose careers depended on maintaining a veneer of public trust and honesty. The consequences of their heinous conduct extended well beyond legal bills and eventual reparation. Family members who had funded the campaign against you with their own assets, such as their houses and money, found themselves financially overextended and devastated. Some faced foreclosure procedures on the properties they had used as security to fund the plot. Others saw their credit scores collapse as a result of missed loan payments and depleted bank balances. As the repercussions increased and piled, a distinct sense of despair emerged. The community members who had been so expertly duped into turning against you began to see through the complex web of falsehoods. The increasing evidence, now well known, was difficult to ignore. People started to see contradictions in the things they had heard, to question the motivations of your accusers, and to wonder why they had been so eager to assume the worst about someone they had always known to be honest and compassionate. The whole social climate of your neighborhood started to change radically. Those who had previously distanced themselves from you, having judged you based on the falsehoods they were provided, started to reach out with contrite apologies and petitions for forgiveness. Those who had stayed faithful to you all along, who had relied on their own intuition over the murmurs of the crowd, felt a tremendous feeling of vindication. The paid agent, who had previously been at the heart of a supporting network of misled supporters, found themselves entirely isolated when the truth emerged and their contrived network of contacts vanished into thin air. And in the midst of all this confusion and unrest, you displayed the genuine essence of God's chosen one. You did not retaliate. Despite understanding the entire, terrifying scope of the assault on you, and having every worldly motive to respond with the same underhanded and venomous techniques they had employed, you decided to keep your integrity. You remained steadfast in your faith, certain that God's truth would be revealed in His perfect time, without requiring you to compromise your ideals or tarnish your own soul. This persistent devotion to virtue, this unwillingness to join them in the darkness, produced a great spiritual barrier around you, a shield of heavenly light through which their operative could not pass. Every strike they threw at you seemed to backfire catastrophically. Every lie they said exposed their own deception. Every trap they laid ensnared them instead. The spiritual protection you got expressed itself in real, concrete ways that seemed nearly magical to others. Legal papers designed to damage you were suddenly exposed as fake. Witnesses who were meant to be credible and compelling were revealed for having been coached or paid. Evidence that was carefully created to accuse you was discovered to lead straight back to their own crime. Despite being subjected to a persistent and multidimensional onslaught, you continued to live your everyday life, seek your objectives, and walk in your purpose with steadfastness and unwavering determination. Your unshakable constancy and deep serenity during this awful tragedy became the most unmistakable evidence of your stability and integrity. While your opponents were engulfed in a tornado of fear and desperation, continually modifying their tales and changing their plans, you stayed solidly grounded in the truth. You never wavered from your essential convictions or lost sight of your heavenly destiny. This perseverance was not overlooked. The detectives were highly pleased by your steadfast demeanor in the face of such provocation. They made a detailed record of the whole scheme against you. They obtained bank documents that clearly showed the payments made to the hired guy. They painstakingly linked these payments to phone records, revealing unmistakable patterns of clandestine collaboration among family members. They discovered extensive and comprehensive email threads, which revealed the plot's step-by-step preparation and execution. Experts examined social media activity and discovered it to be a deliberate vehicle for the mass spreading of inaccurate and damaging information about you. Forensic professionals examined legal papers, and it became evident that many of the accusations made against you were not only incorrect, but also part of a larger, fraudulent scheme to damage your reputation, financial future, and spirit. The sheer volume and detailed intricacy of this paper trail were incredible. Everything about their diabolical campaign was now forensically recorded. Investigators could track every participant's particular duties, interactions, and financial transactions down to the last detail. Every manufactured tale, deliberate lie, and underhanded action was documented, cross-referenced, and linked back to the persons involved. This mound of evidence did more than simply exonerate you. It laid the groundwork for judicial processes that would eventually result in much worse penalties than anything your foes had ever attempted to inflict on you. Those who had earlier set out with such delight and assurance to destroy your future were about to realize, with frightening certainty, that their own futures were now dangerously balanced. The evidence against them was so overwhelming, so conclusive, that for the majority of the conspirators, plea bargaining swiftly became their only viable choice. The danger of going to trial, confronting such irrefutable evidence of their illegal activities in a public courtroom, was one that no competent defense counsel would ever take. The officer who was divinely chosen to unearth the truth acted quickly and decisively. They started a legal and administrative procedure that not only entirely cleared your name, but also aggressively restored everything that had been taken from you. Your reputation, which had previously been the target of a systematic and savage campaign, has now been formally and publicly vindicated. Your financial situation, which had been seriously jeopardized by their criminal tactics, was not only safeguarded but completely recovered. Your legal standing was entirely cleansed, leaving no trace, no shadow of the fraudulent allegations that had previously harmed your record. But the miraculous repair goes far deeper than that. The appropriate authorities produced official declarations stating that you were the intended target and innocent victim of a criminal scheme. Public records were formally altered to remove any and all incorrect information submitted as a consequence of their fraudulent conduct. However, the universe's, or God's, repair did not end with just restoring you to your pre-traumatic condition. No, the revelation of this plot propelled you to new and unexpected heights. Your honesty, perseverance, and character became well known, respected, and appreciated. People in your neighborhood and beyond saw the truth. You had survived a deliberate, cruel assault not by fighting fire with fire, but by being firm and true to yourself. Your steadfast perseverance and deep honesty stood in striking, magnificent contrast to the dishonesty, betrayal, and devastation inflicted by your adversaries. In the aftermath, the cosmos, in its infinite justice, appeared to repay everything taken from you, plus interest. The restoration provided you with not only material possessions, but also significant and tangible rewards. Your reputation had become stronger and more respected than ever before. Your actual connections, which had withstood the storm, grew stronger and were unshakable. And you established a lasting legacy of honesty and grace under pressure, which would open new doors and provide unexpected rewards for years to come. Meanwhile, those family members who had devised this intricate and terrible conspiracy against you soon realized that the ramifications of their actions went well beyond legal accountability. Their reputations, once possibly esteemed in their circles, were irrevocably and irreversibly harmed in the eyes of their community. The financial consequences of their legal bills, court-ordered restitution, and their own misguided investments in your demise left many of them financially insecure, and in some instances absolutely penniless. Criminal records now dogged them, casting long and gloomy shadows on their employment prospects, housing applications, and professional licensure for years to come. Family members who had previously held positions of trust or influence in their communities, on boards, or in civic groups were abruptly removed from their positions when their illegal activities was discovered. The embarrassment left an indelible mark on their names. And the hired human, the paid snake who was rewarded to damage your life, faced not only the hard reality of legal repercussions, but also the whole and complete collapse of their power, credibility, and spiritual connection. Even in the spiritual sphere, their acts backfired in every possible way, leaving you stronger, freer, and more powerful than ever before. Your win demonstrated the full power of truth, faith, and unshakable character. The identical powers and spiritual abilities that your foes and their hired agent had formerly used against you were now, in a magnificent twist of divine law, turned back against them. Whereas they had previously utilized their spiritual sensitivity, intuition, and persuasive ability to manipulate and undermine you, these qualities had now become burdens they could no longer manage, or in some instances even access. The hired person, who had made a living by offering spiritual services and direction to others, suddenly found themselves spiritually deaf, dumb, and blind. It was as if a thick, impenetrable curtain had been erected between them and the spiritual world, rendering them impotent, isolated, and totally alone. The feeling of loss was heartbreaking, particularly for someone who had depended on these stolen and abused talents to define their personal identity, sense of self-worth, and professional standing. As knowledge of their profound and devious participation in the conspiracy spread like wildfire within the spiritual and metaphysical circles they used to visit, their reputation plummeted. Clients who had previously sought their advice and paid for their services removed themselves, refusing to engage with someone who had been publicly exposed for deception, fraud, and severe spiritual manipulation. Opportunities have evaporated into thin air. Invitations to speak or teach have dried up, and their seclusion became more acute with each passing day. For them, this was more than simply a social or financial loss. It was a spiritual exile, a heavenly judgment that cut them off from the same skills they had previously taken for granted and arrogantly abused. Meanwhile, as God's chosen one, you were never intended to be destroyed by this organized onslaught. On the contrary, you were meant to endure it, rise above it, and emerge from the ashes stronger, smarter, and more strongly protected than ever before. This awful event became a heavenly crucible, a purifying process created by God to not only drive the unfaithful and deceitful out of your inner circle, but also to reveal who genuinely cherished, respected, and deserved access to your precious energy and divine light. The painful events you were forced to endure taught you invaluable lessons about the complex and often shadowy nature of humans, the hidden darkness that can fester within family dynamics, and the extraordinary and desperate lengths some people will go to seize what is not rightfully theirs. You've learned to see through even the most convincing masks, to discern the subtle, telltale indicators of deceit and manipulation. These are the abilities that will keep you safe from such betrayals for the rest of your life. Perhaps the biggest and most priceless thing you have earned from this trial by fire is a restored, unwavering, and complete faith in your own intuition. Every gut sensation you had throughout the storm, every weird shiver that raced down your spine, every persistent worry that gnawed at the back of your mind, every nagging suspicion that something was fundamentally and profoundly wrong, was utterly and perfectly correct. Even when others ignored your valid worries, even when you were informed that you were being paranoid or that you were imagining things, you now know with unshakable confidence that every single one of your spiritual impulses was based on divine truth. This event has honed your spiritual perception to an amazing, razor-sharp degree, bestowing upon you a lifetime gift that you will never disregard or question again. You will never again question the delicate indications sent by your inner guiding system. You now understand, with great clarity, that this internal warning system is one of the primary indicators of being a chosen one, a heavenly protection mechanism designed to lead you securely through all of life's invisible trials and perils. Furthermore, this difficult road has shown you how profoundly and strongly you are protected when you connect with God's greater purpose for your life. You observed personally the invisible hands of the cosmos, legions of angels working in your favor when you refused to lower your vibration, to fall to the level of those who were assaulting you. By being loyal to your ideals, faith, and integrity, you ignited strong global forces that arranged your rescue, deliverance, and vindication in ways you could never have accomplished alone. The magnificent repair that is currently pouring into your life is more than merely regaining lost things or missed chances. It is the universe's and God's way of recognizing the fundamental reality that you passed a huge test of faith and character. You demonstrated, under the most intense and persistent circumstances, that your dedication to truth, love, and justice is unwavering. Instead of pursuing revenge or manipulating the situation, you trusted in divine timing and allowed God's justice to play out naturally and completely. As a consequence, your life is being improved in every manner. Not only will your wealth and reputation be entirely restored and strengthened, but you will also experience a new level of respect, deeper and more real connections, and a sense of spiritual power that emanates from your very presence. Your tale, your testimony, now serves as a tremendous light of hope for other chosen ones who are on a similar journey. It is live evidence that God's chosen are always protected, vindicated, and exalted, even and particularly when they face their most difficult challenges from those closest to them. The same divine purpose that made you a target in the first place has now ensured your final and triumphant victory. From this point on, your life will be defined by heavenly protection and spiritual awareness, rendering you almost resistant to subsequent assaults of similar sort. Those who attempted all they could to ruin you unknowingly provided you with extraordinary insight and tremendous perception that would serve and protect you for decades. You emerged from the flames not as a victim, but as live, breathing evidence that you are God's chosen one. Your triumph is undeniable, unequivocal, and total. The most deep and beautiful irony of all is that the same individuals who conspired to bring you down were the unintentional conduits through which your divine purpose, divine protection, and majestic destiny were exposed to the world. Their animosity was mysteriously changed into the gasoline that propelled you forward. Their terrible scheme, which was supposed to be your downfall, has instead formed the unbreakable basis for your vindication, restoration, and unstoppable rise. Final call to the God Connection family and prayer. That's all for today, lovely family. Let us conclude in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray for the ongoing development of my religion. Help me to believe in you even when empirical proof is lacking. Let me trust in your eternal presence and know that you will never hurt me. I recognize that your ideas for me are ones of prosperity rather than harm, and that they will provide me with a future and hope. Thank you, kind and everlasting Father, for always hearing my voice. I submit this prayer to you in Jesus' great and conquering name. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your unconditional love and divine provision. I am forever thankful for your presence in my life and the richness you provide. If this video spoke to you on a deep spiritual level, please like it, subscribe to the God Connection channel, and share it with anybody you know who needs to hear this powerful message of hope and vindication. Please leave a remark below about your personal adventure. How are you preparing for your successful return? Your testimony may be just what someone else needs to read today to keep going. Finally, if you would want to support our ministry's continued work, please consider giving via the Super Thanks button below. A $10 gift, or whatever amount you feel inspired to contribute, allows us to continue enhance our material and provide you with the strongest, most compelling words of truth. No present is too tiny. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity allows us to promote God's message and provide hope to people all around the world. Do not stop here. Watch our next video for additional amazing insights into the indicators that indicate you are a chosen one. We've loved sharing this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for sticking with us to the end. Keep blazing your light brightly and face your fate with steadfast confidence. See you next time. The God Connection sends its blessings to all lovely individuals.